My name is Bruno Bianchi-Sarcone. This is the Moving to Spain webinar. Today is February 16th, 2026. And this is a presentation and Q&A session at the end. And if you want to join just purely Q&A session with an expert immigration lawyer, the next Q&A session about moving to Spain is on March 24th. As I said, I co-host that Q&A session with Ainhoa, expert immigration lawyer, and I also have released a non-lucrative visa Q&A session as well that you can also join for free. What will you gain today? First, a clear, realistic roadmap to move to Spain, how to avoid most common and costly mistakes, how to choose the right location, visa, and budget, and what to do first, next, and last. Remember that the content of this webinar is for information purposes only and is not legal or financial advice. Spainguru.es objective is facilitating the relocation process for English-speaking foreigners to Spain since 2014. You can find very good reviews on Trustpilot and on Google Business. Almost 300 reviews, 99.9% of them 5 stars. So you're in very good hands. And you can use Spainguru.es for free. Join my newsletter that I send every Monday to 18,000 readers. Watch the videos, 1 video per day, more or less. Almost 9,000 subscribers. Join the free webinars, 7 webinars now. And also visa guides, more than 2,000 articles, and so much more. And of course, a huge community with an aggregated total of 150,000 members. Of course, I have vetted professionals who can help you along the way. Especially, I highly recommend you, if you're thinking about moving to Spain, at least consulting with immigration experts and tax advisors. That's the very least. But of course, you can find all kinds of experts who can help you in every single step on the way of moving to Spain. And also have built a free, no sign-up tool, which is called the Move to Spain Checklist. Very relevant for this webinar. And starts 1 year before moving to Spain and basically breaks down every single step that you need in order to move to Spain. Generally, of course, it's going to be differences depending on your situation. But definitely, this is a great, inspiring, in my humble opinion, checklist that can help you out. Now, let's go with the presentation. Let's talk about the stages of this huge project, because it's a project that you can break down into 9 stages. First, vision, schedule, destination, budget, immigration, housing, arrival, community, and emotional journey. Don't worry, we're going to talk about each one of them. Starting by vision. Vision is very important because it's the base. It is what will guide you every decision that you make, right? So having a clear vision will help you take decisions. When you are in doubts, think about your vision, and you will take the right decision that will get you closer to that vision, right? And how do you do it? How do you have a clear vision? Well, you have to define how your life will be in Spain once you move. Yes, and how do you do that? First, you think about your perfect or ideal day. Yes, you think about what you're going to do, the activities you're going to do, the life-work balance, your social life, different activities you're going to do, and also where those activities are going to happen. The preferred setup. Is it going to be a city? Is it going to be a town? Is it going to be on the coast or inland? Yes, all these things, you need to think about them and have a clear vision before moving to Spain. Are you going to be needing to be close to healthcare, like hospitals, international schools for your children, shopping areas, transportation, international airports, for example? Is that going to be important for you? Is it going to be important to have availability of festivals? Yes, a lot of things to do culturally, great food that you love, yes, or having exposure to arts, or if you practice sports, all those things, you need to think about them. Yes, start picturing them and writing them down. Yes, and also now you start thinking also longer term, not only on a day-to-day basis, but what could be your longer term goals, like midterm, long term? Are you considering maybe learning Spanish, starting a project or joining a project, a business, maybe just retiring? Yes, staying in Spain for the longer term or just a sabbatical year? Yes, what are your immigration goals? Yes, and then you have to be a bit selfish as well and identifying your top must-haves for your life in Spain. For example, I want to live in a place that has wonderful weather. I don't want to see, cloudy skies anymore. Yes, so that will narrow down the list of places where you're planning to move. For example, northern Spain is not going to be your thing. right? So list 3 non-negotiables. Be selfish there, right? And that will be this first step. The second step is thinking about your first, let's say, your day-to-day life, what you think is going to be a perfect morning, afternoon, and evening, and then you zoom out in time and you think weekdays versus weekends, what you plan to do during the weekdays and how your weekends are going to be. Are you going to be traveling around inside Spain, maybe take some weekends away outside of Spain? But then you start zooming out as well in the calendar and you compare the different months. What are you planning to do in August? Yes, or in Christmas time? Maybe you plan to move back to your home country and spend Christmas with family. You have to have that in mind as well in your vision. And then, if you can, zoom even more further. Different years. Are you planning to stay more than 1 year? Maybe 5 years? Maybe for the longer term? Yes. Right. So this is very important exercise. And then you can become a bit creative and create a vision board. Yes, where you do a collage. Yes, or you write sentences. You write your 3 non-negotiables. You write or take pictures of holidays in Spain or in places where you've been that you want to recreate. Or yes, take old magazines and even do this, let's say, visual exercise to show what your vision should be. Step number 4, extremely important, especially if you're moving with someone else, with your spouse, if you're moving with your family, you need to share your vision. Others need to understand what your visions is, yes, what your non-negotiables are, so that you are fully aligned. Share this vision with others. And if you're moving by yourself, or also with family, but share with your friends if you can, share with your family, or very important, join a community of people who are living in Spain or moving to Spain and share that vision and get feedback for that vision, right? Step number 5, you start going from the idea and the plan, the idea and the dream into the plan, right? What you can do in the next 30 days that will get you closer from that vision, which is moving to Spain and having the life that you have described in your vision. So that's a very important exercise. People tend to say that it's not important, that you have to check your visa eligibility first, you have to check other things like taxes, etc. But I think doing the exercise of the vision can set a very robust base that will then permit you to avoid, let's say, discrepancies with reality, to put it nicely, and big disappointments. Yes. Now, probably the next step that you will write when you start thinking about the plan to move to Spain, the first thing you're going to write is, I have to investigate more in the different things. How do you investigate? You will need tools. So there's many free tools that you can use. And here's a very long list of very important, in my opinion, and necessary tools to investigate. First, Google, of course, YouTube. There's so much on YouTube. Among the YouTube channels, you have Spainguru.es with tons of content about moving to Spain. All the AI tools like ChatGPT, Perplexity, Gemini, all those are wonderful, but be careful. Always take that information with a pinch of salt and always contrast it, like fact check it, especially if you're talking about immigration and taxes. They make a lot of mistakes, but generally these are wonderful tools. Google Maps is extremely important, and Street View to see the different places, because Spain is a different country with different dimensions, different distances, right? And also it is a very hilly country. So comparing with the place where you live now can also help you build your information, okay, before arriving to the place. Also, we mentioned that it's a hilly country, topographicmap.com, wonderful tool that is free just to see how hilly the different neighborhoods in the different cities are. WeatherSpark, also another huge, beautiful, free tool that can help you compare up to 7 cities' climates. Yes, so for example, you're in San Diego and you want to know if Valencia is similar climate. Well, you can compare those 2 cities and 6 more if you want, all at once, and see the differences, right? And you have Idealista.com, which is the largest real estate portal with a lot of data. Also has very nice map section there. Numbeo.com, a community-based data about cost of living. This is the main one, but they also have crime index perception, they have quality of life as well index, and many other things they've been adding along the years. Then the Facebook groups, my opinion, unavoidable. Now I'm interviewing a lot of people who came to live to Spain, and all of them they tell me they can't stress enough how important it is to join the communities of people who are moving to Spain or already living in Spain. The amount of information and how fresh it is top. So very important. Now, of course, Spainguru.es, you have a lot of tools that you can use when you move to Spain. Now let's talk about the second stage, schedule, right? So you need to build a schedule or a roadmap that will keep you organized and therefore, of course, reduce stress, right? So many people define moving to Spain as a series of small steps, which are not individually difficult, but there's so many of them that you need to be extremely organized, okay? You need to meet deadlines, you need to gather documents that expire, so you have to have valid documents at the time of application. You need to pay attention to the calendar. You need to know about taxes and the implications of tax residency. We're going to talk about that later. Stuff like that, you need to all have it in mind when you are deciding your roadmap. And the way you start it is you set your moving date in the future, allowing yourself enough time, at least 6 months if you can, preferably 1 year before, like 12 months, and work backwards from that date. And you identify the different milestones or most important things that you need to do in order to hit that goal, which is moving on that certain date. And of course, you will identify you need to get a visa, you need to fix your taxes, you need to find housing. If you have a home, maybe you need to rent it out when you leave or sell it. You need to find schools for your children, transition from your jobs, different things that you need to put together, but also break it down with their different time frames. Some things may take a long time, some things less time. For some people, selling a house can take several months. For some others, in 1 month, it's fine. So you need to think about all that and be flexible, noticing that you can't control everything. You don't know the future very well. Things tend to be longer than you initially expected. So always allowing for D-days and having plan Bs, right? So here's a example of workshop that you can do, you can print out, that can help you build your roadmap, starting by the intended move date in the future, right? And the step number 4, we already mentioned the previous steps, is the bonus one, in which you will sit down and anticipate challenges. Yes, and those, of course, there will be general challenges, but also specific to you, right? I'm interviewing, as I said, people who move here. For example, one couple who had one of their children had dyslexia, so they needed to find a school that had arranged this specific need, okay, and they found it in Fuengirola. They were thinking initially to go to Murcia or to Alicante, but in the end, they had to go to Fuengirola because of this specific challenge for them. Okay, so all these things, of course, you know your situation better than anyone else. But if you also join the community, you will also read about others' experiences and what blocks or obstacles they found on their way, and very importantly, how they solved those problems and overcame those blocks. This is a screenshot of a couple who moved from the UK to Alicante. This is a screenshot of a couple from New York to Seville that I actually interviewed on Spainguru's YouTube channel. So if you follow my channel, you read my blog posts and everything, and you join the community, you will be in touch with all this information that is changing all the time and can give you a lot of inspiration. Another way to see the different timeframes for the different milestones is to use a Gantt chart. You can see there that every column is 1 month, so roughly 1 year there. So you start building your vision the first month. You start writing a list of places where you think you would love to go and move to in Spain. Then you start with immigration and tax planning, searching for eligibility for the visas, finding about the tax implications of moving to Spain at certain times of the year, etc. Start thinking about a budget, of course, how much money you need for the whole move and to live in Spain. Schedule, start building the roadmap with all this initial investigation. And with all this, you review your vision and your destination, hopefully narrowing down the list of places and having a more practical vision less dreamy, let's say, and more about something that you can really apply into an executable plan. Then, once you have the executable plan, you go for it. You apply for the visa. Okay, maybe you sell your house, you do your moving, you sell your stuff, you say goodbye to your family and friends, etc., etc. All these steps you can find them in my Move to Spain free checklist. Yes, and then you're right to Spain, etc. So this is another way to see it. And if you zoom in, for example, and this is a slide that I borrowed from my non-lucrative visa webinar that I should update it, really, because it has a few mistakes. So take it with a pinch of salt. You can see that certain documents like police check, marriage certificate, birth certificate, they have a validity period. Really should be 3 months. Some consulates take 6 months. But you understand that when you do the appointment in person at the office, all those documents need to be valid. So you need to plan in advance all the different documentation so that everything is valid when you apply, allow enough time to get your appointment at the consulate or BLS office, allow enough time to sworn translate the documents and get the apostilles, get your health insurance if needed, etc., etc. So you need to be organized. And for this, people uses generally Google Sheets, which are free, or Excel, or more robust tools like Trello, which is a card-based project management tool where you have basically a column of cards and you're moving from left to right the different tasks that you need to perform. And that also has, let's say, it is visually nice to have a card-based project management tool that can help you, and it's free. Let's talk about destination. Where in Spain you could go to live. And of course, you need to listen to yourself. And when you build your vision, have a definition of a place that you would like. But of course, for that, you need to ask yourself questions. I have certain key factors in mind when deciding. Very important, climate and geography, right? Spain is a varied country with different climates, geographies, and I'm going to show you information about it. Then community and culture. Yes. Are you okay with a big city, or is it that too busy for you, too crowded, and you prefer a smaller place, or maybe in the outskirts of a big city, inland, close to the coast? Normally on the coast is more expensive. There is less housing, but more access to amenities, of course. And of course, the beach is beautiful in Spain. So all those things you need to start thinking about, right? And the access to amenities, as we mentioned before, healthcare, schools, transport, etc. And very important, the cost of living, right? Because living on the coast is generally more expensive than living inland. Living in Madrid is more expensive than living in Soria. Yes, in Soria, they say there is no housing crisis because there's not too many people who fight for living in Soria. Let's go back to the climates we mentioned at the beginning. Roughly, there are 3 types of climates, right? There's more if you want to go deeper into it, but you have in orange, you have the Mediterranean climate, which is mild and rainy winter, hot and sunny summer. You have the semi-continental climate in the middle, which is quite cold and rainy in the winter, but very hot and sunny in the summer, right? And then you have in the north the green one, which is the oceanic climate, which is cool and rainy. Yes. So really like Basque country or Galicia in the north could be compared to Ireland weather, really, because it's very rainy, it's very green. You go there and you see all that green and you say like, well, there must be a lot of water falling here so that they have this vegetation. I live in the south, which tends to be quite arid compared to that. On the other hand, we don't get so much rain. So all that you have to think about using WeatherSpark to help you think. As I said, you can compare up to 7 cities, and you can see different climate, let's say, conditions that you can compare with. So it's really interesting. As I mentioned, the topography of the cities is also very important, especially if you're retiring in Spain or if you're moving with family. In my case, I have 2 small daughters, 3 and 4 years old. I still have the double stroller I need to push, so I can't really go up the hills very much. I get very tired, so I prefer flat terrains, and for that, it's very important. Malaga is a quite hilly city, so I had to narrow down the areas where I can live comfortably, and because that will be one of my non-negotiables. I don't want to live on a hill, yes, for example. And many people forget when they talk about accessibility, they forget about this part. They're thinking about like wheelchairs accessibility or deaf people accessibility, but they don't think about generally the hilly part, because Spain, it is quite hilly country. The main cities of Spain are quite hilly. And here you have some examples: Valencia city and Barcelona city. Yes, you can see there the differences. And then when you compare the different neighborhoods and you go for the cost of living or the cost or prices of different neighborhoods, you can see that sometimes that price is related to the hilly condition, because there's basically less people who want to live in the neighborhood because it is somewhat less accessible, right? On the other hand, you can see it as an opportunity, right? So for this, you will use forums. Okay, you can join, the different groups on Facebook. Yes, for local news, for expats, groups of people who are living already there. Yes, you will use the real estate portals to find out the different prices per square meter for rentals, for purchase in the cities. Yes, so you can explore your regions, okay, and narrow down the list of places where you can go, right? But of course, nothing will replace doing a scouting trip to Spain, where it is where you will get the real feel of that place. And there's many things that people recommend doing when you do a scouting trip to Spain. I recently released a video about it where I put together all the main tips of people who came to Spain on a scouting trip, where they said what they did and what they regretted not doing. So it's really interesting if you can watch that trip, where you try to live in the place rather than visit it like a tourist. Yes, you don't do so much the beautiful or the glamour part of visiting the city, but you will try to enact a normal life in that city, just to understand how you would be living an ordinary life in that city. Okay, so that's important that you do it. Another consideration for scouting trips is that your physical presence in Spain counts towards Spanish tax residency. So you have to be careful if you're going to do scouting trips during the same tax year in Spain than when you're planning to move. All those days will count towards Spanish tax residency, with big implications from a tax perspective. So think about that too. I have a section called destinations that you can watch, that you can find on Spainguru.es. And the cool thing is that each of those 13 destinations that cover, I would say, 95% of where people move in Spain, are directly linked to those services, and they are constantly updated. I'm talking about WeatherSpark, Idealista, and Numbeo. So you get really like real-time updates for cost of living, for rentals prices, for weather conditions. So definitely worth having a look. And like everything on Spainguru, it is free without sign up required. So definitely worth checking it out. Then let's talk about budget, right? How do you build a budget in order to move to Spain? You start by dividing by different types of costs. You have one-off costs, okay, like visa fees, deposits, moving to Spain, shipping containers or boxes or pallets, initial setup expenses. So that has to be in during as a one-off cost. But then you will have recurrent monthly expenses like rent, mortgage, healthcare costs, utilities, groceries, cooling, and also people forget to include taxes, right? So all this needs to appear in your budget. In order to have realistic expectations, I recommend you using Numbeo.com to understand the different prices for the different cities, and also to compare the different costs of living in the different areas, because of course, like everywhere, you have more expensive cities, more expensive neighborhoods. So you have to have all that in mind, because your budget will vary strongly depending on your lifestyle, but not only about your lifestyle, but also if you plan to rent, okay, versus planning to buy a property, etc. Right? So what you need to do is not to become a scientist about this, but you need to be conservative, okay? And if you can, have a 3 to 6 month buffer in case unexpected costs arise. Yes, you need to have a protection in case if you had run into costs that you weren't expecting, right? So other things that you need to do when you build your budget is anticipating currency fluctuations and potentially banking challenges. A lot of people are concerned with the weakness of the dollar lately against the euro, but you have to understand that the dollar fluctuates okay, against the euro. The dollar was very weak at the beginning of the euro. Then it became very strong, almost 1-to-1. And now we came back to more, let's say, original exchanges, right? So you need to understand that and budget accordingly. Yes. Another thing that a lot of people don't budget is that many visas have financial thresholds, not only when you apply initially, but also when you renew them. For example, the non-lucrative visa, when you apply as a main applicant, you nearly have to show that you have, let's say, 30,000 euros either in savings or in passive income for 1 year. But when you renew, in some places, they will ask you double that amount because the renewal will be not for 1 year, but for 2 years. So you need to prove to the Spanish state that you're not going to be a burden to them. So you need to prove that you have enough savings or passive income or combination of both for those 2 years. And you need to have, let's say, that money or proof that you have access to that money. And that should be also be in your budget as well, right? So this is very important. As I mentioned, Numbeo can be quite useful for setting the right expectations. And I have personally used Numbeo.com many times in the past, and I have to say that it is quite trustworthy in terms that it is not scientific because it is community based. It's basically people who go there and say how much they spend for the different things. So there is a margin of error, but the larger the city, the more precise the values are. So definitely a nice tool to use. So the cost of living will vary dramatically depending on your lifestyle. If you dine out every single time, if you cook at home, but probably the biggest part of your budget will be whether you're renting or you're owning a home. And if you own a home, whether you're going to be paying mortgage every month or it's going to be fully paid. Housing in Spain now tends to be a fairly large part of your budget, right? So this is very important that you understand it, and the different choices that you take will have a significant influence on your budget. If you want to build your budget, you go to the step-by-step checklist for moving to Spain, and one of the steps very initially is build your budget. I have several videos about it, and I have a budget tool, which is a free Google Sheet that you just select file, copy, and then you can edit it on your own computer, and you have the main categories that most of people include when they build their budgets. So that is also for free. And last but not least, it's very important that, my opinion, that you contrast or you get feedback in the communities that you join, whether your budget is realistic or not. A lot of people do this every single week, and I think it's very useful. And you get a lot of feedback from others. And I think it's very, very necessary if you haven't moved to Spain to understand whether your budget is healthy, okay, or it is conservative, etc. Right? And there you can see this family who is asking for feedback, and they answer it's a healthy budget, well calculated, housing cost is the X factor, or they ask you questions that probably you didn't ask yourself, or they said the car insurance estimate might be a bit low, maybe you can tweak that number a little bit, etc., etc. So it's really, really useful to be part of a community to get feedback on everything that you're planning to do. We mentioned taxes is a big one, a big line in your budget. Let's talk about tax residency in Spain. There's basically 3 conditions. Any of these conditions may trigger your tax residency in Spain. You don't have to have 3 at the same time, not just one. The biggest and most important one is if you spend more than 183 days physically in Spain in a calendar year that ranges from January 1st to December 31st, that is the tax year, then you become a Spanish tax resident in Spain. The days don't need to be consecutive, and it doesn't matter your immigration status. In other words, if you come to Spain in a scouting trip as a tourist and you spend 89 days in Spain, those 89 days are counting towards the Spanish tax residency. So imagine that you come on January and you stay until March. Yes, 89 days just to do a scouting trip. Then you come back to your country, apply for a visa, come back to Spain thinking that, oh no, I wasn't resident in Spain, but you didn't count those 89 days. If authorities see that you've been over 183 days, you will become a Spanish tax resident during that same calendar year. And if you sold your home during that same year, you will have to pay capital gains tax on that sale. So you have to be very careful. Second condition, if your main income source comes from Spain, Or third, even if you live outside of Spain and you spend less than 183 days, but your family lives here, including wife and children or husband and children, then you could be deemed to be a Spanish tax resident. So all that will make you liable for paying taxes on your global income and potentially on the net value of your assets via the regional wealth tax and the nationwide solidarity tax. So be careful with that. Other taxes you need to know, you mentioned the income tax with the progressive tax brackets that range 19% to 47%. You pay your annual income tax bill in Spain on June 30th. You have the regional wealth tax that generally starts at a threshold starting at 500K, 700K, 1 million K on the net value of your assets per December 31st of the previous year. Okay, some regions, basically, they have 100% full rebate on this tax, making it effectively 0%, like Madrid, Andalusia, or Cantabria. Yes, but then there is a national solidarity tax that luckily starts at a much higher threshold of 3 million plus an allowance of 700,000. But applies for all Spain, regardless on where you live, right? Then there is the Modelo 720 that very soon we have the deadline, March 31st, which is not properly a tax. It's just an informative form where you disclose the existence of assets and rights you hold outside of Spain. If any of the categories of those assets, could be bank accounts, could be investments, could be real estate, if any of the category is over 50,000 euros. So if you have two bank accounts outside of Spain with 25,000 euros in each, you have to declare them under the 720 form. I'm recording a video about this form that will come soon. But yeah, basically, this is a form that you need to submit once you become a Spanish tax resident. Then another one, big one, is capital gains tax at between 19% to 30% progressive tax brackets. Yes, and many people, they are concerned about this because they have a home to sell and they don't want to pay capital gains tax in Spain, which tends to be higher than in origin countries. So it's something that you need to think on how to, or plan how to mitigate it or avoid altogether by timing your move to Spain. Then you have other taxes like in regional inheritance and gift tax, transfer tax when you buy secondhand properties, which is also regional. Depending where you buy your property, you will pay as low as 6%, as high as 12% of the property value. So there's big differences, EV or property tax once you are an owner, etc., etc. Another one that you need to have in mind is the special tax regime called Beckham law that generally only will apply to employees moving to Spain. So if you are retiring or you move as a contractor, generally you won't be eligible. But if you are, you can benefit from a 24% flat rate on your employment income worldwide and many perks like not having to declare wealth tax or not having to declare your 720 form, etc., and lasts for 5 years plus one. So this is very important that you have in mind, and that's why I highly recommend you to engage with a professional tax advisor. This scares many, but it is very, very manageable with advice, especially because there's so many ideas that we have that are wrong, okay? And I cover those errors or mistakes that I demystify in my webinar, which is free. I send you a recording every single time that you register, which is the Spanish Taxes webinar that you can join anytime. Then let's talk about immigration, right? Some people say you should start with this even before building your vision, even before knowing what you will do in Spain or why you're moving to Spain. But people say like, well, there's no point in dreaming what you will be doing if there's no pathway to move to Spain. But generally, it is quite doable to find a way to move to Spain. Therefore, I think it is not as a primary thing, but of course it's extremely essential. And I always mention you to consult at least 1 hour with an immigration lawyer, at least to understand whether your ideas make sense. And especially if your strategy involves staying in Spain for the long term, it's important to have the right pathways clear from the beginning so that you can fulfill your goals. The most common pathways are the non-lucrative visa, especially for people who don't need to work and have passive income or savings. Then you have the digital nomad visa, which is a quite new visa for remote workers not working for Spanish companies. Then you have the general or ordinary work permits via the work visa or the entrepreneur visa for business plans, where you get a sponsorship from a company or you have your own project and prove it that it's economically viable to the authorities. You have a student visa, which is very easy to obtain, but is not properly a residency permit. It is a permiso de estancia, and therefore will not count towards your Spanish citizenship residency requirements. So it's very important that you have that in mind. Remember that the golden visa was ended last year on April 2025, so that no longer really applies. It was for investing in a Spanish property or bonds or having bank deposit, but that's not a pathway anymore. So it's important that you understand and get information on which one would apply to you. And depending on which one applies to you, you will have to fulfill very different requirements. Some visas can be applied from Spain, some others can only be done from consulates abroad. You will have different processing times, different timeframes, different documentation, and different outcomes that will have a big impact in your long-term goals. So that's why it's important that you consult with someone who knows and can give you the right information. Okay. And once you apply for the visas, you need to be extremely organized because the original documents expire, because you need a lot of paperwork. And that's why Spain is also unfortunately famous because of bureaucracy. It's one of the top things that people dislike about Spain. And you need to be very, very organized when you apply. If you want to know more about the different visas, the main ones, the lucrative visa, digital nomad visa, you can join my webinars where I go deep into each one of those, and you can join today and get a free recording every single time. Now let's talk about housing. Once you move to Spain, there's different options. You can rent, you can buy. Best possible scenario, my recommendation, it's not going to be the cheapest, but will give you enough flexibility, is renting, right? Renting is highly recommended because you need to know where you're moving to, yes, know that you like it, and also learn the rules of the market, learn what are good opportunities to rent longer term, learn about the different contracts, learn about how realtors work in Spain. So renting in Spain at the beginning, normally you rent short term. Then with all this information, once you become proficient into the rental market, you will find a good opportunity to move longer term in an area that you know that you like. That's why it's recommended that you go flexible at the beginning. And then once you know what you want and know the market, you go longer term. Yes, because buying it is not flexible in Spain. You pay a lot of taxes when you buy, you pay a lot of taxes when you sell. So it is absolutely rigid. Okay, it's not something that, like buying something on Facebook Marketplace, right? So it's very important, in my opinion, that you learn where you are and you learn what good opportunities are, and also to avoid potential scams, etc., etc. For this, you can use this tool, Idealista.com. Gives you a lot of information. Not only you will understand the different prices, but also how prices have been changing. The progression of the price increase has been pretty dramatic over the last years since COVID. You can see that Barcelona and many other cities have been growing over 10% on a year-on-year basis. This doesn't seem to stop. Let's say that the people that the government wants to blame, like short-term rentals in the center of the cities, or the how you say, the businessmen who are behind, like who are the devil and everything. Well, now they prohibited in Barcelona the short-term rentals for 10 years, no more licenses given, and still their prices are going up, right? It's 1% of the housing in Barcelona. So basically, what I'm trying to say is that we don't see a potential solution here. And it seems that this is going to continue happening, especially in places in Spain where everybody wants to move. You're going to still see a housing crisis. And it's something you're going to have to deal with. Having said this, I don't know anyone who came to Spain, wanted to move to Spain, had to go back to their country because they didn't find a decent place to live. No, it just takes longer time, takes a little bit more money probably, but it will certainly happen. And for this, there's nothing like preparation and flexibility at the beginning. Something that you need to consider is that realtors in Spain, they work in different ways. They have different incentives than in other markets. For example, in the US, when you move to a city and you engage with a realtor, the realtor has access to all the portfolio in a certain area, and you just tell them what you want, and they will tell you these are the houses that are available that match your criteria. Whereas in Spain, the realtors, their incentive is different. This is an unregulated profession in Spain. Anyone can be a realtor overnight. If you have something to sell or rent, you can charge a commission for it, and they don't tell you how much commission you can charge. Right? So if I had a house or two to rent out, if I convince someone to rent them out, I can be a realtor tomorrow. The thing is, I will only get a commission if I rent out those 2 houses, and I will not be working on your behalf as a purchase or personal shopper, right? So it's very important you understand when you engage with realtors in Spain is that they will want to sell you or rent you the properties in their portfolios, and they won't have access to other properties outside of their portfolios. So you will have to engage with many realtors and understand why they are, let's say, how they are motivated, yes, to understand how they, let's say, they will not be working on your behalf, basically. Now I have quietly released a section on Spainguru under the logistics, under the services and logistics, which is access to personal shoppers in different areas. I have all, like in northern Spain, Costa Brava, I have in Malaga, I have in Murcia, and soon to come more areas that can offer you personal shopper services to be on your behalf. Okay, so that's also another crucial thing to pay attention to, and also learning about the different types of contracts, potentially having a lawyer to review the contracts so that they are fair and transparent. And all that, as you can see, takes some time to learn. It feels like the Wild West for people who just moved to Spain. But after a little while, when you understand the way the things work, everything falls into its place. I mentioned that people have some trouble to rent in general, but especially foreigners who have not a financial or work history in Spain. Some of them, and these are screenshots from the community, face a difficult catch-22 situation because their laws here are very pro-tenant. So the tenants can very easily stop paying, and it is very hard to evict them, right? So there is fear from landlords, and as I said, it is a real fear the landlords have that tenants will stop paying, and they won't be able to kick them out. Sometimes it takes months and years. They need to still pay the utility bills. They still need to pay the mortgage every single month. So it can be a very, very bad decision to rent out to the wrong person, right? So some landlords in Spain, they will demand the full payment protection, but insurers won't have access to Spanish work histories because you just moved to Spain. Therefore, they won't be able to insure you, and then the landlords will hesitate to rent to you because they don't have any other thing, any other data to know that you are good payers. Unfortunately, compared to the US, there's not much data. There is no credit history. There's no eviction reports. So it is basically the landlord have to trust you, see your documents, believe that the documents are real, and it is a more like you need to decide on a 20-minute conversation whether you're going to rent to this person or not as a landlord. And since the laws are literally against you, unfortunately, it is hard sometimes to convince the landlord to rent to you. And this is the situation that people report, but everyone ends up to solve them. Okay, now let's talk about the steps that you should follow, or I also recommend to follow. First of all, you need to prove that you enter Spain. And I underline Spain, not just the Schengen area. Schengen is a group of 29 countries in Europe, which is internally borderless, but has immigration control in its outside borders, right? So if you fly from New York to Madrid, you will be enter Schengen, and you will get a stamp on your passport, or you will get a screening, like a scanning of your face and your fingerprints, because now there is a new entry-exit system that is being rolled out until April 2026 in the different airports in Europe. And basically, you will have a proof of your entry in Spain because you need a proof of entry into Spain. Now, if you fly from New York to Frankfurt, you will get your stamp, but from German authorities in Frankfurt, but not from Spanish authorities, right? And then, for example, you will take a train from Frankfurt to Spain. You'll cross the border, you'll be in Spain. There's no proof when you arrive to Spain. Some people say that you keep your train tickets, you keep your gas station tickets, you keep your boarding passes, and that will be enough. But it's a hit or miss situation with the police officer because you officially have 30 days, well, depending on the visa, course, but you will have at some point to get a residency card. If you're under a non-lucrative visa, you have 30 days from your entry to Spain to get your residency card. And when you go to the police station to put your fingerprints, they will ask you, when did you enter Spain? They will check your passport. If there's no stamp there, if there's no information in the system, there is a high chance that they tell you, sorry, we don't know when you entered, get out of Schengen and come back. That has happened. So be on the safe side. If that is your case, get an entry declaration. Once you enter Spain, you have 72 hours to get it. You go to the nearest national police station in the train station or close to the border or at the airport, make a stamp, proof of entry into Spain, and all solved. Second thing, when you enter Spain, once you're renting a property or you own a property or you know someone who gives you permission, register your address. You bring your rental contract or an authorization to the city hall in the place where you're living, and they will register that information, and they will give you a proof of address called Empadronamiento, which is also very necessary for many different procedures, including the residency permit. Normally, you will need, if you're renting, at least 6 months rental contract, okay? At least having a rental contract for at least 6 months. Therefore, vacational rental or short-term rental usually doesn't work for Empadronamiento. So also plan ahead for that. Now that you are in Spain, and sometimes from outside, there are online bank accounts that you can get, but also when you are in Spain, if you want to open a brick and mortar bank like Santander, BBVA, La Caixa, Sabadell, all these banks, normally they have a non-resident bank account, because until you get your TIE card or a residency card, you are considered by institutions a non-resident person, right? So they have the option to give you a non-resident bank account, which usually is more expensive, but it's very useful to have a Spanish IBAN where you can receive your euros, okay? That maybe you use Wise to convert before, okay? You do the currency conversion outside and you receive euros in your non-resident brick and mortar Spanish bank account. You can use that bank account to pay your rent, to pay your utilities, to pay your gym, you name it, okay? All the things that maybe if you're paying with an outside bank account will be costly or will give you errors. Another big one is getting a Spanish SIM card and keeping your original SIM card, SIM or eSIM, depending on your phone. You have to have possibility to use your phone both for your origin country and for Spanish procedures, because Spanish authorities will send you SMS with appointments for the police, etc. It's very necessary to have Spanish bank account and also install WhatsApp if you don't have it. This is very, very common to use WhatsApp, and also having access to your origin country SIM card, porting your phone, because you need to have also control from your bank account abroad. And normally they send you 2FA messages, okay, for confirming your identity, especially if you're in another country, they will find out that. So all that needs to be working. There's content about that. And as I said, you have certain time to get your residency card. We spoke about it. There's a huge bottleneck with appointments to at the police. So you will have to allow weeks, sometimes months, in order to be able to get your residency card. So have that in mind. There's a couple of bonus recommendations, like getting digital certificate or clave, which is software in your computer to sign legally for procedures that you can do online from your house, or clave with your mobile phone, okay, so that you don't have to get appointments with the different authorities, right? So for example, for renewing a visa, having a digital certificate is necessary. Yes, for renewing it or for applying for a visa like digital Nomad visa from Spain, you need it. And then bonus one also is not all nationalities, but some nationalities don't have agreement with Spain. So after 6 months, for example, US driving license holders, the US driving license stops working, let's say, it's no longer considered legal. You need to get a Spanish driving card, yes? So if you're American, if you're Canadian, for example, if you're Mexican, doesn't work. If you are Australian, you will need to get a Spanish driver's license. If you're from the UK, for example, there is agreement with the UK and you can exchange it, right? But basically you have a 6-month period where you can use your Spanish, your origin country driver's license. And then depending whether there is agreement or not with your country, you have to either exchange it or obtain a Spanish one from scratch. That is the case of Americans, okay? I mentioned that many people use platforms in order to convert their currencies into euros. One of the most common is Wise. I have been using it for many years, and it works very well for me. I have heard some horror stories from people transferring like large amounts. So take it also with a pinch of salt, but for this process, really works very well, which is basically you have dollars or you have pounds, British pounds or Canadian dollars, and Wise lets you open, let's say, virtual bank accounts in any of those countries with the banking details of each of those countries. For instance, for example, this is my bank account. You see, in US dollars, I have a bank account at the Community Federal Savings Bank located in Jamaica Avenue in New York City. So that is in dollars. My US customers send me dollars there. So if you have dollars, if you have a bank account in Chase or Bank of America, you send dollars to the Wise account, okay, in dollars at no cost. Then inside the bank, Wise, you convert those dollars into euros, okay, and automatically those euros appear in your euro IBAN, yes, which is a bank account in Belgium. And then from the bank account in Belgium in euros, you send those euros if you want, or if you pay directly, you can pay it directly most of the times. Sometimes there are errors. Or if you have a non-resident bank account from Santander Bank in Spain or BBVA, you send those euros for free, let's say, from Belgium to Spain. Yes, and that's how people save a lot, because you will only have, let's say, the currency conversion fees, but not the banking fees on top of the currency conversion. So that is also something to have in mind. Now let's talk about community. It's almost 4 p.m., so I have to hurry up. This is very important as well, because when you move to Spain, probably you move to Spain because you want to have an active life, maybe enjoy the different pace of life, enjoy the Spanish culture, yes. And what best way to feel at home? That building connections, human connections with others. There's way to do it. You can try different culture activities like dance classes, sports, workshops, volunteering, joining expat groups as well. Highly recommended. Just meet everyone you can. Also, not only to enjoy your life, but also in case you have issues or you need help, it's very important to have people to talk to who can help you out, because now you're going to be, let's say, not close to your, let's say, family and friends for a long time. So it's very important you build up that very quickly. And one of the top regret from people who move to Spain is not learning Spanish before they arrive. So people who know this, they recommend taking language courses with real people or with online tutors, okay, rather than downloading apps like Duolingo, which are, of course, more than welcome, but unfortunately will not give you the right level of Spanish that will get you by. Yes, it is good to start. It's good to get inspired, but really the best is if you can join a course or have a tutor, right? So it's very important. And one of the things I like about Spain is that they don't push you to learn Spanish, but generally, all my friends in Spain, none of them speak English, just like that. Even the ones who have contact with foreigners, even for their jobs, they don't speak English. Okay, maybe it is something from an older generation. I'm 46. Okay, I don't consider myself especially old, but I'm not young. Maybe the younger generations speak English, but honestly, being a country in Europe with 100 million tourists coming every year, I can tell you that it is shockingly low, the amount of people who don't speak English, okay, or speak very basic English. So it's going to be against you. Really, if you don't speak Spanish, you won't be able to take the most out of your life. And you will also, maybe you will get by with general situations, but when you have to go to the doctor, when you have to go to the bank, when you need to do paperwork, when you have to talk about taxes, that's when your confidence will maybe go down if you didn't improve your Spanish. So this is something I'm just repeating what other people say. It's not my recommendation, but just a mere observation of what others who feel at home, who enjoy Spain, who say this is the best decision they could make, but it could have been faster and better if they paid attention to this. Of course, you can find Spainguru a few options who are extremely affordable, who can help you starting your Spanish courses today. Now, last but not least, let's talk about the emotional journey. A lot of people overlook this because they think it is all amazing. It is an adventure. It is all excitement. And this is called the honeymoon phase. But then a lot of people, if not most, will face the reality check. They will face the bureaucracy, some cultural barriers, and they will have doubts. Yes. And that's why having a vision, a strong vision, will help you avoid having strong doubts or will help you having answers when you start doubting about your decision. Right? It's very, very common. Yes. So hopefully, if you have spent enough time in your vision, you have done the scouting trips, have done your investigation, you will not be surprised. You will not have unwanted surprises. And the doubts that you have will be easier to cope if you have started building your relationships, building your circle around you. Yes. And being part of your life in Spain, it will come faster. And hopefully, you will go into phase 3, which is acceptance, feeling at home, and embracing the lifestyle. So be patient. The pace of life here is different. Most people will take 6 to 12 months to adapt, and try to be part of your life wherever you move. I have videos about this on Spainguru's YouTube channel, more than 1,000 videos, many of them about what others who move to Spain recommend, giving you tips. But here's a list. Try to be flexible. Spain's pace is different. Bureaucracy is slow. Get help if you can. Learn Spanish before arriving to Spain for your own sake, not for others. Keep an open mind. Remember, you're moving to Spain. It's a different country. Even if it's very close to your culture, it is a different country, right? It's a different way to see things, especially among the different regions. There's big differences as well. Keep an open mind, embrace cultural differences, and build a support network as soon as you can. Yes, prepare, and enjoy after this everything that Spain has to offer. Definitely the best country in the world. I have been living here for 21 years. I'm originally from Argentina. I live in 7 different countries, and I wouldn't change this for anything. Remember, you can use Spainguru.es for free unless you engage with any of my recommended professionals. You can read the reviews. You're in very good hands. Many people did it themselves, moving to Spain, but don't hesitate maybe to get a consultation for 1 hour, or with a tax advisor, with an immigration lawyer, just to make sure that all your hypotheses are right, that you are in the right track. And of course, if you need help and you prefer that they take your hand along the way, you have relocation services, you have immigration lawyers who can help you all the way, just to make things easier, right? And of course, you can find all those recommended services that I have been vetting and I have been recommended for several years. Let's stay in touch. My email is hello@spainguru.es. Join the groups, watch the YouTube channel, join the newsletter, and remember that the content of this webinar is not legal or financial advice. Take it with a pinch of salt. It's for information purposes only. And yes, that's it. So let's see if you have any questions. There's a Q&A session right now. And I have one question here. First of all, thank you everyone for joining today. I have here one that says, for the SIM cards, can you put both in your phone at the same time, or do you swap them out? Or better, to have 2 phones, one with each SIM card? So that depends on your phone and the level of flexibility that you want to have. So my phone, for example, is a Xiaomi from China. This one, it has 2 physical SIM slots. So actually, I have an American SIM because I go to USA every year or every 2 years with my wife. And I have one SIM from the US and I have one for Spain, right? But because this phone takes 2 physical SIMs, right? But some phones, especially in the US, only take eSIMs, right? So if we go here to screen sharing, I have here Living in Logistics, Spanish SIM cards. I have Lobster for physical SIMs. So that's the cards that you put in the phone. Or Volafly or Airalo will give you eSIMs for Spanish numbers, right? So depending on the type of phone that you have, it will be able to take eSIMs or physical SIMs. Or some people, they have 2 phones, 2 physical phones, one for Spain, one for UK or Canada or USA, right? And they keep them separately just because they like it that way. They understand it better that way. But let yourself, let's say, get recommendations or read articles on how you could port your different numbers. There's also services that you can use online. So yes, definitely you need to have access to both. Yes, and that will depend on the phone that you have and where you are from, where you're moving from. Says, I have an Android. I have been able to have multiple eSIMs cards simultaneously on my phone. Just turn on and off the one that I want to use at any given time. You see, in this case, that's the possibility that this person has. As I said, it will depend on if you have Android, if you have this different brand. I know the last iPhones, for example, they only take eSIMs. You won't be able to use Lobster, for example, which is a very, very popular service, but only offers physical cards. Unfortunately, they have the project of offering eSIMs at the end of the year. So, but still they don't have, right? So we have also these two other options. So yes, basically we went through the questions, not too many questions, although we have a lot of attendees. But if you want to ask anything before we finish, remember that I have been recording all this. I will be uploading this to YouTube today, and I will send you the link in an email that I will send you later on. And you can always reach out to me if you have any question at hello@spainguru.us. If you think that the information that I shared with you today is useful, please leave a review on Trustpilot. There you have a button that will redirect you to Trustpilot. It takes only 1 second. It helps me a lot. It helps others find this content. It's free content that could help them to move to Spain. And if you're watching this on YouTube, if you liked it, please give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and comment below if you have any question, if you're planning to move to Spain, in which stage of your move to Spain are you. I would love to know. And thank you so much. Thank you. I'm glad that you found it useful. I see you around and have a wonderful week. Stay in touch. Goodbye.